Welcome to our special segment, AI in Focus, where it's all about the advances of artificial intelligence and how it's impacting our daily lives. Artificial General Intelligence, or AGI, is a field of research aimed at developing super intelligence that most technologists believe we're getting closer and closer to building. Just how far are we from the day when AI matches or surpasses human capabilities? For more now on the future of AGI, I'm joined by Heidi Boisvert. She is CEO and Creative Director of the futurePerfect Lab. Welcome to the program, Heidi. Thanks for joining us. Now, firstly, talk us through the key technical or conceptual milestones. Do you think, these need to be reached before we can say we have AGI?
Yes, I do, actually. I mean, there's been a lot of hype lately around the timeline shrinking, between 1 and 2 years to 3 to 5 years, but I still think we're in a kind of a 10 to 20-year window. Some of the key elements, I believe, both conceptually and technically, have to do with, generalized access domains, the ability to work with transfer learning so that we can move across different disciplines seamlessly. The other areas, there's about 5 or 6 other areas I would highlight, one of which is common sense reasoning. It's very easy for humans to sort of intuitively understand everyday concepts, but not so much for computers.
Yeah.
And, yes.
Some predict AGI might emerge in the next few decades. Where do you stand on the timeline for AGI development?
Yes, that's what I just expressed, I think, within the next 10 to 15 years. But I think what we've been hearing in the media is that it's shrinking to like 1 to 2 or 3 to 5 years. I don't know if you saw the recent article by Kevin Roose in the New York Times. But, from OpenAI to Anthropic and Google DeepMind, this has been kind of like the predicted window, and it's hard to determine whether or not it's, the techno-utopian hype because of the monetization aspects, or if really the technology and computational power is there. So I would say these areas that I was mapping out, whether we're talking about generalized access domains, common sense reasoning, self-directed learning is another key area, and then dealing with the robustness of uncertainty or sort of unpredictable environments. And then some other key areas have to do with like theory of mind, which I think that's the area I'm most interested in. In terms of making progress, we need to really target affective computing and multi-agent systems, right? So from my background, in looking at immersive performance environments, I'm interested in, can we use theater or dance environments as a way to incubate, right, simulate that potentiality.
Right.
So,
and as it becomes more advanced in that sense, I guess ethical concerns grow. What do you think the ethical framework should be in place to sort of guide these developments that you speak of?
yeah, I mean, there's a whole host of things that are, the most common ones we hear around. I think a real key piece for me when we start to think about ethical frameworks are value alignment, right? Have we really thought about the human values that we sort of agree upon? Like, should these frameworks actually come out of the UN, for instance? And I think, we hear about, racial bias, extractive data practices, the environmental costs, which are critical in terms of, computational efficiency. Can we make our algorithms, more efficient so we're not using so much energy? And so I think, there's many areas we need to look at, like the social political aspect. We need to look at the environmental aspects as well as like the human social fabric. And the reason I raise that is because I think, when Facebook and all of the social media emerged, right, we didn't really think about the hidden costs or sort of societal challenges that would surface. Now we're contending kind of, after the fact, looking at the ways in which it can be used and misused.
And I'd imagine it would be ever evolving in that sense too. Do you foresee AGI impacting the job market in a sweeping sense, particularly in fields that require creativity and problem solving?
That's my domain. So I think I was recently speaking on a panel with Justine Bateman, who's been very vociferous about this, and we could just look at Hollywood as an example right now. And I think a lot of the studios are actually kind of reorienting and finding ways of like cutting what we call below the line jobs, right? So I think we can see across, I believe that, you know, every discipline, right, every domain is going to be disrupted in some way in terms of their pipeline, whether we're talking about a cultural production pipeline or technological pipeline. I mean, right now, there have been articles recently, even in terms of like coding, right? You know, about a year ago, right, we would use, you know, AI, different types of LLMs to do kind of like right, what I would call co-coding in a way, right, to actually kind of speed up the process of coding. And now if you look at Techstars, you know, they have a couple of people in their most recent accelerator, they have about a quarter to a half of their group already coding their entire projects, not from scratch anymore, but using LLMs. And so I think, you know, every field is going to be disrupted in some way. But I'm not saying that they're going to be adversely disrupted. I think we're definitely going to have to do a lot of upskilling in a way. But I think why I referenced the Hollywood one is because we're seeing it in different parts of that pipeline, you know, all the way from like makeup, you know, to, you know, script writing and even, you know, the latest with The Brutalist, right? We saw that they were using voice cloning for a number of the films that just won the Oscars. So I think, you know, right now the tools, I think, are still somewhat sort of unsophisticated in a way. But I also think that, you know, the tools that we have access to sort of, you know, in an artistic sense, or even sort of like, you know, ChatGPT, DALL-E, Midjourney, and some of these Gen AI tools that have popularized and helped people understand to some degree AI, are actually not really what's happening behind the scenes inside industry. I think the tools are far more advanced and sophisticated, which brings, you know, another point here around ethics. I don't think it's just about sort of ethical frameworks. I also think it's about creating AI literacy programs so that, you know, everyone, you know, across the board really needs to contribute to what these kind of value-aligned frameworks should look like.
Fascinating insight you've provided for us, Heidi Boisvert. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.